Welcome again to Mobile Rolling. We've got some very special guests later on. We come to Kapunda. We're going to catch up with a couple of really special identities. Stephen Norman, the president of the Kapunda Harness Racing Club, and a man that was very responsible for things running smooth, Bill Adams. Of course, he was there, the dynamic duo with Merv King. They were known as the Laurel and Hardy of harness racing. They entertained everyone years ago and had a very important role to get things rolling here at Kapunda. So we're here at the Kapunda track. Look, we're going to take a break and come back and catch up with these fine gentlemen after the short break. Well, here we are at the Kapunda Harness Racing track, a track that was founded in 1947. We've got a gentleman that can tell us all about what happened in 1947, Bill Adams, and he was a former president of the Kapunda Harness Racing Club. And we've got the current president, Stephen Norman, as well. Stephen, welcome to the show once again.
Thank you, James.
And Bill, welcome to mobilerolling.net.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, great to be here. Bill, I think we'll start with you first because, 1947 the track was founded, but you remember being here as a young man.
Yes, I was a school student in those days, and we came down after school on the very first day, and we saw the last couple of races, and it was a great, exciting show. We stood behind the iron fence down there, which was in a barbed wire fence, which was outside. That was the outside guide for the whole show. Incredible day. Believe it or not, most people came here by train.
Yeah.
And horses and
people,
yes.
Yeah.
And often after the last race, I'd just put the hose on the horse, ride back to the railway station, get on the carriages.
Yeah.
And there was a huge crowd here on the first day. I'll never forget that. Big for Kapunda.
Yeah, for sure. So the horses and the drivers and the people all come pretty well most by train. So I guess the roads weren't sealed back in those days. Were they dirt roads or gravel
dirt
roads?
roads.
Yeah.
Hancock Road from the railway station was a pretty rough road, but they walked that, or they hopped in the jinker.
Okay. So that's something we do different now, Stephen. It's all horse and floats, isn't it?
It
Cars
is.
and floats and trucks and all sorts.
Considerably different and some very flash modes of transport, of course. But I think people, even my age, and I'm 55, would find it hard to comprehend what Bill was describing there, where you would get on the train, and of course, train transport in those days would have been huge. And you just gear the horse up once you come off the train and drive it to the track. It's something very, very unique. Yeah, it would have, not unique then, but certainly people would find it very hard to comprehend now.
Yeah. Hey, Bill, was that what got you hooked into harness racing as a young man, or was there a history before that?
Yes, there was a history. I was a very good friend of the Hamber family.
Yep.
And Eli, towards his retirement, said to me, if you ever leave the bank, I've got a job for you. You become secretary of the Kapunda Harness Racing Club.
Yeah.
And that was in 75. In April, I was appointed onto the committee as secretary, and the place wasn't in very good shape in those days, and I went to the Racecourse Development Board, and with some help from our bookmakers, 22 of them, we had enough funds to knock over what was here and rebuild.
Right.
And believe it or not, we opened that particular year on the 9th of September.
Okay.
We went through a very dry winter, so there was no hold up with the buildings, and Normie Falkenberg from New Upton was responsible for all the Besser brick, and Arms Engineering did the shed.
Yep. Yeah. So they ended up building what we've got here pretty well now,
Yes,
Bill.
correct.
Now,
we extended the shed once because it wasn't big enough.
Yeah. Now, when you became involved as president and also, secretary treasurer as well of the club, and I mentioned it at the intro that you were known as the Laurel and Hardy of harness racing. You were the tall, lean guy, and Merv King, he was a little bit plump, I suppose. But you guys entertained everyone. I mean, you had different strategies to get people to the trots because you knew if you got them to the trots, they were going to have a good time. And always remember, free ticket to get in. You go to the local pubs and just get the word out there.
Yes, we built up a membership of many hundred.
Yeah.
And it was a $10 job. And wherever we went in the pubs, we usually sold 2 or 3 members.
Yeah.
And we had a big happy family. And Tuesday nights in Kapunda were very, very popular.
Yeah, huge. Yeah.
Very, very popular. And, those days were wonderful. It was hard work, don't get me wrong, very hard work. But there's a lot of enjoyment in it.
Yeah, great fulfilling.
And all the committees, Terry and Cadena and Gawler, Adelaide, they all came to the trots.
Yep.
And we, of course, went to their meetings as well.
Mm.
You don't see too much of that anymore.
Yeah, there's the point there, Stephen. Modern technology has changed things around and maybe even changed the mentality of people nowadays. You're a similar age, you're a little bit younger than me, but one of the other things that people used to come to Kapunda for were the pasties, of course.
Absolutely.
That was famous, but you can see what Bill's talking about, how it used to be and how it is now, which makes it hard for you guys to get people to come to the trots.
Indeed. If anyone had any doubt about how things have changed, I think the coronavirus has really emphasised that hugely. It is such that anything that can be done online now will be done online.
Yeah.
And we've seen things like even when people have come to the track, they haven't necessarily gone to the tote windows to bet. They'll be sitting there in the dining room, in the lounge there, and they might have their phone or their tablet out and they're betting online with the corporates. And that's how things have changed. People don't have to come to the track to get a bit of a fix. There's TV, there's streaming services which show the racing. You don't have to come to the track. One of the things that we are looking at, I might be jumping ahead a little bit, but in the future, for our club is how do we get people back to the track? While many people will say that it's not necessary to have them at the track because the betting turnover is what we're basically all about now, I still feel that if people don't come to the track and don't have an interest in the racing, then they may not bet on it anyway, either on course or off course. So it's one of the things we're looking at down the track. But
something that Bill's been involved with as well, and now, Kapunda is not just for harness racing. You have many other different things here that you do to entertain people. Tell us about some of those.
Most certainly, yeah. Harness racing is actually, to be honest, the way things have evolved has become a small part of what the club does. This is a community-owned facility, and so we don't own the land. The improvements that, yes, of course we do. But as Bill's mentioned, something about the age of the facility, and so it requires some upkeep. That's just one aspect. But we have our Kapunda Rodeo, which is also a lot of work, but is a huge money spinner for us, and we become religious every year and pray for good weather.
And you get about 5,000 people there for that?
We do, throwing in the competitors, etc. We would get very close to 5,000 people certainly at our last few rodeos, which we're holding every year. We have our swap meet, and that's just a matter of advertising. Turn up, we're here. People set themselves up, but it's good for about $10,000 a year clear.
Yeah.
And
now the rodeo is usually somewhere around about November.
This year we are probably a bit of a news flash here. We are actively planning to run the rodeo this year.
Okay.
On November 21st.
Yep.
We are pointing ourselves towards the hope and to an extent the expectation, certainly within South Australia, that in terms of the coronavirus, that we will be able to run the event and that we'll be able to run it with a crowd. So that's where we're actually actively planning for that now.
Okay, that's good. Swap meet somewhere around May, if I remember right?
Usually the fourth Sunday in May.
Okay.
Fourth Sunday in May. We did consider running that through spring this year, but we decided to point our attentions towards the rodeo. So we'll just put all our efforts into the rodeo. And as I mentioned, hopefully we can actually run it. But the swap meet will then be in May next year now.
Stephen spoke about COVID, Bill. That's changed something that you do. You always have an association with Kapunda, and you always run a very special biannual event here at the Kapunda Harness Racing Track.
Yes, unfortunately we've been greatly affected by the virus. We were all ready to go in March this year, and it was cancelled like everything else was cancelled. And it's probably meant the end of the farm fair.
Yeah. So you originally called it the Farm Fair, and I think the first one you had was in 1999.
Correct.
And then you changed the name to 4x4 this year, but
Yes.
then you had to cancel it.
Yes, and we had a great response from the 4x4. It was a very good move, and as it turned out, well, it was cancelled, which is a great shame. And it was a costly sort of a situation.
And with your farm fair, you had to make modification. I mean, you remember that when the 50 acres was bequeathed by Sir Sidney Kidman here many years ago to use this as a recreational place, and for, as Stephen mentioned, not owned by Kapunda, so it's there part of the community, for the community. But you remember the creek that used to run through here. I always remember the back straight, and the trotting track had a big dip down the back straight. You've modified that, you've taken that out, but also you've modified the inside, the grass area to suit your farm fair as well.
Yes, look, that's been a great move. It was a costly move. We had our first farm fair in '99, as you mentioned, and we used Dutton Park and the car park out here.
Yep.
And this was a bit on the rough side. So following that, we decided as an income for the trotting club that we'd fill the creek in. It was an enormous job.
Yep.
It really was. But then again, it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
It did happen. Yeah.
And you ended up didn't you put watering system or electric watering in there?
And that's
or
all,
both?
it's all irrigated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a massive improvement for the club as well, Steve.
It is. I say it while you're standing here, but the things that Bill has done in the past has benefited this club now and into the future. And there were some big jobs. That irrigation, I seem to recall, Bill, was $20,000 a long time ago.
Oh, yes.
And the filling in of the creek with the concrete blocks, etc. The actual configuration, my apologies, of the track when the lights came out. All of those things have benefited this club now, and as I mentioned, into the future, and also benefit the community, because the Rideau, the farm fair as it was, and the swap meet to an extent bring a lot of people into the town.
Yeah.
And so as a community facility, we are certainly, the club is doing its bit for the community also. And largely it's because of the infrastructure that Bill has been responsible for putting in.
Yeah, there's been a lot of hard work by people before you, Bill, during your time, and now with the people now to make the Kapunda Club what it is and has been over the years.
Jim, a little bit more history. I remember the trees here before they started clearing it, and in doing so, a local resident, Julie Barch, was killed by one of the trees that came down upon him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was a sad part of the history, but they soldiered on.
Yep.
They really did.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was amazing what happened. My dad was involved in building some of the sheds and whatever here as well. So I've got a fair bit to do with the history of the club.
Yeah.
And I'm that proud of what they're doing at the moment. They've done a marvellous job.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Stephen, being a local, Allenby Lodge nearby, this was your local track. Did you drive any winners here on this track?
I did indeed.
Yeah.
I drove a couple, none that anyone would remember, but just a couple of mares, I think, that I trained myself. Fayest, I seem to recall, was one. Nana Charles may have won here. But I also have fond memories, and knowing there was local knowledge to this track.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, the creek and the dip that was there before, there is still a run downhill in the back straight. Yep. And a little run uphill in the front straight. If you weren't going at the 600, turning into the back straight, you probably weren't going at all. So you needed to get going. Unless you had a horse that had a quick sprint, you need to get out and get going. Yeah. And so it was handy to have that local knowledge, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah. Bill, you ended up getting involved in ownership. I mean, you did many things. I mean, you were here at Kapunda, you shifted to Kilmore, you run a great ship at Kilmore, and I spoke with Len Baker this morning, and he was telling me, oh, what a great man Bill Adams is, because I was telling him we were going to have a chat, and he remembers the Kilmore days, and, you know, it just shows what a great operator you were. But in ownership, you ended up owning horses. Was that way through or later on in life?
Well, do you know, if I never saw a horse, I couldn't buy this place. I was an owner and I was a breeder,
Yeah,
and yeah, I've had 100 winners in
yeah,
my time with the Butterworths and Joe Hanson,
yeah,
and they were the main trainers I had. But I'll tell you something, the name that will never be forgotten is Bobby Jakes.
yeah,
Bobby Jakes was the best driver Kapunda ever had. He knew this track absolutely backwards.
yeah,
He was and a lovely fellow with it.
yeah.
And he drove a lot of my winners early. And young Mark Billinger drove quite a few of my winners. And the Butterworth trained and drove. And no, it's been great. I loved it.
Yeah.
I had a farm out the road. I had probably more horses than I had sheep. Much to my wife's disgust.
Oh, thank you for the kind words about my Uncle Bob. Yeah, he was a great guy, and he was a very clever driver as well.
Yeah.
And I got to say, Stephen mentioned before, I remember one night here, he made use of that dip down the back straight to effect. But I won't tell you what happened. But he was very clever. He knew the track at Kapunda, and you're right. He used to tell us stories of when we'd be driving home. Oh, this bloke went too early. This bloke, he said, you just got to take the shortcut sometimes. But yeah, Bobby was pretty cluey at driving for sure.
right.
Yeah. Stephen, what are we looking forward for Kapunda? I mean, you like back in Bill's day, every Tuesday you'd race pretty well built. Now you only get a handful of meetings per year. That makes it hard for the club.
Makes it hard to continue your identity as a harness racing club.
Yep.
We have 4 meetings a year. We are quite capable within our volunteer workforce of conducting more. Not a huge amount, but we can certainly conduct more. And I'd certainly like to have more because of that necessity, I believe, to continue to identify as a harness racing club. So currently, we are a harness racing club, but we're known easily as much for the other events, the Rodeo, the Farm Fair, and the swap meet, etc. We are increasing our hiring and whatnot, which is great. I mean, the betting ring, which is behind the camera, is probably the largest hireable area undercover in the Light Regional Council, which is a large council area. We do all this, but harness racing, to be plain, our race days, as a profit and loss situation, we probably actually lose money on. It's about the only thing we lose money on.
Yeah.
But we are very, very keen to continue to race and as I mentioned, race more often because we would like to continue to identify. And to be honest, our committee, the great majority of them, are here because of harness racing.
Yeah.
So we run a rodeo and swap meet, etc. We run these fundraising events. But the reason we're doing it is for the harness racing club.
To keep harness racing going. Yeah.
And as you know, Jim, we put extra money onto our Trotters Cup and Pacers Cup. Or the last time we ran them, we actually lost that cup meeting due to the coronavirus. But the previous one, we put $2,000 extra on of our own resources to those races, and that's come from our fundraising. It's something we're keen to do. We actually even looking at reinstituting a Kapunda Derby, which would probably require some of our own funds also.
Yeah. Well, harness racing people, you should be aware of that. The Kapunda Club over the years have always done this, and especially in recent years, they have they're doing things on the side to keep harness racing going for the harness racing participants. So don't forget that. Keep that in mind. What a lot of clubs are doing, and in particular Kapunda are doing. Bill, we have to wrap it up. Anything else you'd like to say in finishing about your history, the Kapunda Club history, or anything like that?
Well, really speaking, the most important factor was this, that when they forced us to take the lights down, which was McEwen, who was then the chair of the Harness Racing Authority,
Yep.
he said to me, "We'll pay all your debts if you close."
Really?
Yeah. And I said, "We'll pay our own debts back." And I left the club in fairly heavy debt.
Yep.
And as I said, I'm not proud of what these fellas have done since then. It's a mighty credit to them.
Yeah.
And I love the town, and I love this club, and I'm sure it will go for a long time yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they've got that fighting spirit, Bill. They wanted to keep going.
Well, they need it, and they've got it.
Yeah. Well, well done to you, Stephen. I mean, that's a great compliment in itself. And anything that you'd like to finish off with saying?
Well, first of all, it's the committees that we've had also, absolutely. We hasn't just been myself. I guess my experience in the industry leads me to make some good decisions, I guess, about it, how we fit into the industry. But just one thing I'd like to finish up on, where for the viewers, our cup meeting, as I mentioned, we lost the last one. We are looking to make that a big day. I'd like to make the Kapunda Cup race day something similar to the Balaclava Cup in the Gallops or the Adelaide Plains, where there's marquees. People there, people come, they may not even see a horse. That's what I'd love to, that's what I want to get the Kapunda Cup to. The first edition of that, we'll have the Trotters Cup and Pacers Cup on the same day. We haven't a date for it yet, but look out for that one, viewers.
All right, there you go. So look for that. We'll let you know, no doubt, on mobilerolling.net when that's going to take place for the Kapunda Cup. But that gives you a little bit of history about Kapunda. I mean, we haven't even touched on some of the great horses that are raised here. We haven't touched on the fact they had, Bill did, where they had 22 bookmakers here. Now we get one if we're lucky. So times are changing, but that's about the sport of harness racing. One thing for sure, participants, the Kapunda Club, as Bill mentioned, they were offered the chance to sell out and pay the debts. They wanted to keep going, and they're doing it for you. Don't forget. We'll take a break. We'll come back with more.